How's it going, everyone? Sephir here, and today we are going to be talking about territory wars, otherwise known as New World's 50 versus 50 sort of company and faction based combat system that they have going on here. And so we're going to break this down into two video parts. We will have another one tomorrow, but for today's video, we're going to be covering the war, some base mechanics of it, on the attacker and defender side, some tips and tricks that I've learned from participating in a lot of these, and also my own personal opinion on how the weapons perform in terms of a tier list, specifically for 50 versus 50 war. So that does not count for PvE or duels or anything of that nature. It's geared directly towards that. And so, without further ado, we'll go ahead and hop into the first part, which will be covering the war itself and sort of the items you can buy and some of the functions of it. So, the war is kind of split into two parts here. You have an attacker and a defender side, and as you can see on the screen, we're coming out the gates here. This is defender's point of view, but there is an A, B, and C location. The attackers have to take both A or all of A, B, and C in order to progress further. Once they do take that, they will enter the gates, which they can destroy around the fort. And if they reach the middle, there is a flag with a sort of meter bar there. The more people you have in it, the faster it goes up. If they can get there and control that point, then they will have won the war, right? This is pretty basic. Everyone knows this. It's kind of just how it is. So what we want to talk about is some of the items within the war and what they do. So the main stick out items, we won't cover everything, but from my experience and what I saw, and this is just coming from someone who hit 60 in the beta and has played in like 14 wars, we see a lot of unique mechanics. Mostly for the attacker side, we see the usage of something called an Inferno mine, which is a little mine device that you can lay in a open area. It explodes just for high damage, so this is something to take note of. These are very powerful. We also see haste pots, which allow you to get a boost of speed. You can pop them for rotations and just to kind of quick, get a quick zoom around the battlefield. Maybe your enemy's flanking or something. You need to get to a certain flag point at some time. This is great for that. There are also other things from the attacker's standpoint, like ammo and health pots and things of that nature, but mostly these things are not too much relevance, to be fair. The big standout thing from the attacker side is the ability to place siege weapons on the ground, and so you can kind of position these around flags. So the siege weapons that you have access to are things like a cannon, which is an explosive AoE shot. You have a repeater, which is a just machine gun type turret, so it's good at getting like single targets, I guess, or people that are moving quick. You also have a fire mortar, which is a key element in taking points. Basically, it just lobs an explosive like napalm type deal, and it burns the ground around where it lands. So these are really important things to kind of utilize as the attacker. I believe you can have 8 placements, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but you can have up to 8 siege weapons placed on the ground. And they do have shots and ammo with them, which can be reloaded by purchasing ammo kits at the war vendor. So the attackers kind of play around this style. So the thing that would be unique to attackers is the ability to have that fire launcher. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I saw, only the attackers can get access to that. So defender's side point of view, you will have access to cannons on the wall. You will also have access to repeaters on the wall. There is an additional siege weapon called a ballista, which basically does high damage to other siege weapons. So it just does a really nice single target burst. It's kind of clunky though. So it's good for eliminating enemy sieges, and I mean, I guess you could shoot someone with it and see what happens. There is two more mechanics actually. Burning oil, which pours down over the castle gates. So from what I could see, it's more of a cheese gimmick. I don't expect a lot of people to be funneling under the gate once the game gets, evolved and there's some meta into it. There is also a war horn that you could blow, which gives everyone on your team HP regeneration, and defense. So it seems to be like a tide turner for a battle. So maybe using this at the right time could be pretty clutch. So with those elements out of the way, um, a lot of things I saw in this war that really separated good companies from bad companies was just usage of these items and mechanics, which we will go into a much bigger dive into that in the follow-up video for this, which will be about war strategy. But for now, we just wanted to kind of introduce these topics and just give a little tip on like what seems to be good and what doesn't. So going into the next topic will be PvP weapon tier lists, and this is specifically for 50 versus 50. See at this top of the screen here, I'm highlighting this. 50 versus 50. This is for war only, right? Does not have anything to do with duels, does not have anything to do with small skirmishes, does not have anything to do with PvE. So keep that in mind, please, grain of salt on this. So we'll go ahead and just start with the first weapon that we pull up here. This is going to be the Great Axe. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the A tier. And the reason for this is that Gravity Well, one of the abilities for the Great Axe, it's basically you throw it out and it pulls targets into a central location. So this is a great initiating tool and lockdown tool, and it seemed to be very pivotal to making good pushes into enemy groups from what I saw in the wars. And it also has some strong follow-up damage. I know that a lot of players run with the skill called Reap, which pulls people in, and another one called Charge, which just gives you mobility and allows you to deal a bit of damage at the end of it. I'm sure there's other uses for like Maelstrom and some of the other abilities in the Axe tree, but for me, really Gravity Well stands out and makes this A tier weapon. It's probably going to be a very important part of winning a very high level war. So the next one we'll go with here in order is going to be Bow. I would also put this on the A tier list category. Bow has a lot of AoE damage, just really a lot. Poison Shot being one of the standout abilities. The damage over time ability on it is very nasty. You can hit a large clump of people and do a lot of just stat padding damage, as I would call it, with this weapon. You also have Penetrating Shot, which goes directly through targets and gains damage. So this is very ideal for, once again, large clumps. So you might see a theme here. Weapons that do AoE damage and cause people to be clumped up are probably going to be pretty good in 50 versus 50 war. The other ability I saw a lot of people with was Rain of Arrows. It just seemed to do damage in an area and slow. I have seen some people use Evasive Shot and some of the other skills to kind of have more mobility and get away. But I think that kind of comes down to personal preference. In my own opinion, the bow seems to be some type of weapon that dumps ability cooldowns and big AoE damage. Going on to the next weapon is going to be Fire Staff. I'm definitely going to put this one in the S tier. I see that a lot of times in wars, Fire Staff or mages are the top damage dealer, and I think that's just due to its AoE nature. That may change over time as people get better at the game and stop clumping up as much. But for now, you definitely can hit very hard on a giant clump of people, which seems to really spike that damage up, and it's quite hard to deal with. Some standout abilities for this are Burnout, the ability to just charge through and damage a lot of people and put a damage over time on them. Incinerate is a powerful AoE pushback around you, so it's great for diving into a clump of healers. Fireball seems to be a very big staple for this weapon here, as it just does a ton of AoE damage. It's like a lobbed ball that explodes essentially, and it also puts a big dot on the ground, so it's great for shooting it like right in a clump or a funnel where enemies are coming at, and you're just going to get a ton of damage points from that. I have seen a lot of people use Pillar of Fire. It's definitely a good ability, and I've actually seen a mage top the damage meter most of the time with Pillar of Fire. You will be standing back and like sort of playing this caster-esque role, as opposed to the Incinerate, which is more of a dive and get kills build, so it really just depends on what you want to go for there. Next one, Ice Gauntlet. I'm also going to put this on the S tier, although I may bump that down to the B tier later. But for right now, it seems to be very good because of one ability in general called Ice Storm, which basically does a dome of ice damage in an area. It does more damage the more people are in the area. So you could imagine if you hit a clump of 15 people that this thing's going to hurt really hard. So that is one of the best parts of Ice Gauntlet. The other one is that it has Entomb, which is a basically self sort of invulnerability. You get this destructible ice block around you that people can hit. It's pretty tanky. It's got a lot of health. So it is able to clear off all of your debuffs if you spec into it, which is also another really nice thing. The third option I've seen for a lot of mages is they usually choose between Ice Shower, which is a wall of ice that roots and slows, so it's really good against melee and causing a lot of havoc. It kind of prevents people from chasing you. And the other one would be Ice Pylon. I know it's not as popular with people, but I think, in my opinion, is very good. But it allows you the ability to pretty much guarantee any 1v1 duel, and also kind of serve as a frosted ground location to give you increased movement speed with the talents, and really just a general distraction to a lot of people. If they don't deal with it, it'll just keep shooting for 50% weapon damage, which is really nice. Next ability, or weapon, sorry, is going to be the Life Staff. I'm going to go ahead and drag that up here. Life Staff is very powerful without saying. Beacon is one of the more standout abilities. It puts a hot or a damage over time aura around somebody that you hit with it, and it's insane. It increases movement speed. It just heals so much. There's a lot of other good healer abilities, but we won't go too much into discussion with it because it is the only healer weapon in the game. So you need healers in wars, 100%. So without a doubt, this is S rank. Like, you cannot get around this. The Spear. I think the Spear is very good. It has a lot of AoE sweeping abilities that can kind of stun and control people. However, it makes you want to go like dexterity or some type of build like that. You can go strength too. What I've seen is Spear users tend to be very squishy in their melee. So you could imagine they would try to run up in a group of people, and then everyone just starts hitting them, and it may not end that well for them. But it is very, very good in like a small skirmish. So if you're someone who's rotating between flags and picking off some people, it could be good. But I think in general, in the large scale battle, it's not as strong. Some standout abilities are Javelin, which is a thrown spear that if you headshot it, I believe it does quite a lot more, based off distance too. Vault, which is a kind of kick that knocks somebody down, and then leg sweep, I believe, or sweep is the last one, which just knocks them onto the ground. So there's a lot of good follow-up abilities here. So this is a great weapon to pair with something else like bow, spear, or something of that nature. Sword, we're going to go ahead and put that in the A tier. It is a very tanky weapon, and it is very vital to the battle. I would almost put this in S tier as well, because the defensive power from shield, sword shield combo, allows you to take points. So a lot of times what we see is full constitution tanks just pushing up on a point and really dealing not that much damage, but becoming this unmovable wall. And they're also blocking for their teammates with their shield, which is very big. I do believe you can block cannon shots, is what one of our tanks said, but I haven't tested that for myself, so somebody let me know if that is true or not. But if that is true, then that just makes that even more powerful. And I know you can block projectiles and things of that nature, so I think having a few tanks in your war team will be 100% necessary. Definitely at least 1 to 2 tanks on every control point for attacking. Next item is probably going to be Musket. I'm going to put that, weapon, into the S tier, as it hits very hard, but I think it plays a more important role in the war than most weapons do. And since the musket can hit from about 100 meters away, it becomes this anti-siege tool. So what happens is players will jump in a cannon or a repeater or something like that, and they're kind of positioned on the side in some sort of gunner style seat, and you can just headshot them with this. And if you load a fire shot and a power shot, they're gonna really feel it. Like they're gonna get shot and go to like half life or maybe a fourth life, and they just sit there in that turret. You will kill them, so they're kind of forced to get out of this turret. In addition to that, you can actually kill the siege weapons on the wall with the musket and just stop people from like using them essentially. So you're gonna force the enemy to repair their siege weapons and walls. So yeah, definitely a great skill or a great weapon to have here. It's just tons of high single target damage at a really far range, which is quite obnoxious for siege people to deal with. Next weapon is going to be Warhammer. We're going to put that in the B category. It is very strong initiating tool. It's kind of a great follow-up to pair with the Great Axe, but I feel like it's a little... it's like your second weapon that you would use with the Great Axe, essentially. So you would throw your Gravity Well and, dump your Great Axe abilities, and then probably follow up with hammer skills like Path of Destiny, which is really good. It's like a line skill shot that staggers. You could also have Shockwave, which is AoE stun. That's a very powerful as well. And then I think the other one I saw people using was Mighty Gavel in the other tree, which is a double hit. It does quite a ton of damage and kind of slams them into the ground. But I do see use for Armor Breaker, which is a anti-tank weapon. Oh yeah, speaking of anti-tank, I know muskets can do a lot of damage to people that are guarding with their shield. So they can break through that grit, so to say. So that's also something to note. So this is definitely powerful. I may move Hammer up to A, depending on how things go and how the use of that is. But for now, we'll leave it at the B. Okay, next one is going to be Hatchet. Hatchet is very good one-on-one. The problem is it's not so good when you're surrounded by a lot of enemies, as you just kind of get stuck and staggered. There is a death-defying skill for 4 seconds, I believe, with the Hatchet. Somewhere around that time, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, which lets you just kind of stay at 50 HP instead of dying, which is very nice. The standout abilities I've seen with this are Berserk, which lets you run really fast and get a lot of attack speed and some health back. And also, there is another ability, I forgot the name of it, but it allows you to leap at a target. And I think if you hit them from behind, it roots them, which is pretty nice. The main ability on this one that I would be on the lookout for is Infected Throw, which basically it will throw a disease, or like a hatchet that will explode into a diseased cloud. And anybody that enters that area will get healing reduced by 30% on them. So heals will be less effective. And I see this becoming a very powerful weapon as the meta evolves. But for now, I haven't seen many people make great use of it. And it's also hard to like use it as a DPS weapon unless you're engaged in a small fight. So I will put this at the B rank and we'll keep an eye on it and maybe bump it up. And then the last weapon is Rapier. I don't have the heart to put this at D rank, but I will put it at C. It is very, very good in a 1v1 situation or a small skirmish situation. However, it just doesn't do much in a war in terms of like fighting groups of enemies very often. I think that it has the highest skill cap in the game. So this is a weird one because I think Rapier in the right hands could easily be an S tier weapon. It could just straight jump up here to S rank. But average skill user probably won't see much use on this one. I think you would have to be like a top 0.1% or like 1% of player for sure to really make use of this. There's a lot of nuances with it. The evade is a very frequent invulnerable dodge. There is a riposte, which is a timed counter. So you would need a lot of mechanical understanding and fluid movement to really make use of this ability. Fletch is also a great AoE dive through, so it's got some good mobility and stuff. I think it's a great second weapon, but as far as a like main pure dex Rapier jumping into a war, I feel like you're just going to be a squishy target and people are going to, kind of burst you down and take advantage of that unless you were a very, very good mechanical player and could really make use of that evasion and dodges. All right, I know this video was a bit lengthy, but thanks for sticking through it. We will have a second part follow-up to this tomorrow, which will be covering war strategies. So what kind of composition you want to be looking for, how you would take point A, B, and C and the fort thereafter, or even how you would defend these territories. So I'll do my best to give insight as to just my experience on that. But again, take all of this with a grain of salt. I could be wrong on certain things. The meta could evolve over time, which could change this, but I just wanted to put this information out there to share with people who maybe did not get the chance to experience a lot of this stuff and give them a little bit of a heads up and an idea as to what's going on in the game. All right, thanks for watching, everyone, and we will catch you in the next video.